Will Cobra Kai go global? That seems to be Terry Silver's intention and the main question of Season 6, as in the words of Johnny Lawrence, Silver has the valley in a stranglehold. Although we saw a taste of things to come in Season 4, in Season 5 he even brought more of the pain while claiming it was just beginning. A truly dangerous individual. This is why Terry Silver is still terrifying. Let's talk about his tactics, his fights with Daniel and Chozen, his legacy, and more. Let's recap on what we know about Silver so far. Since this is a continuation of my previous video, Why Terry Silver is Terrifying, I'm only going to recap the events of Terry's arc in Season 5. Feel free to skip ahead to the next chapter, but be warned, you'll miss some important details later on in the video. Thanks to the rigged win at the All Valley, Silver has begun to expand Cobra Kai with multiple locations and a flagship location in Encino he primarily teaches out of. He begins to bring on various senseis from the valley to hire them as additional teachers, inviting a prospect named Joichi Joe Tatsuya to dinner, impressed by his knowledge of Tang Soo Do. When confronted by Tori for paying off the ref during the All Valley, Silver does not deny it and callously explains that it was done to ensure Cobra Kai's survival. Whether she decides to stay is her choice. At dinner, Silver and Joe discuss their past rivalries with a common rival, and after showing off his weapon display, Joe agrees to be lead sensei and toast with Kari. The following day, Terry deduces Joichi's true identity as Chozen Taguchi and promises to pay triple if any of the Valley senseis can take him down. However, Chozen soundly defeats the team and sends a message to Silver: stop the expansion and refrain from interacting with the LaRussos or beg for mercy. Terry confronts Daniel and Chozen and asks them to stand down without retaliation, but Miyagi-Do refuses to budge. He gets word from his old lawyer that Daniel tried to contact him, and he threatens LaRusso that he'll be seeing a lot more of him and burns down Mike Barnes' furniture store. Daniel runs into the leader of Cobra Kai once again at a charity auction hosted at his home, where Silver successfully gaslights Amanda and Daniel while taking subtle jabs during the auction itself. Terry finds out from Stingray that Daniel tried to get him to expose what really happened to Kreese and sets another trap to confront Daniel, tricking him into anger once again and defeating him in the fight. With LaRusso seemingly out of the way, Silver continues his expansion by recruiting Kim Da-eun, granddaughter of his sensei, and her way of the fifth senseis. To prepare for the Sekai Takai, he starts to pick out those he would consider leaders, including Kenny Payne, whom he takes under his wing. Terry unsuccessfully tries to sway the Takai board to partner together, and to his dismay, part of his plan to uphold Cobra Kai's image falls apart as Miyagi Fang also announces their intention to gain entry into the tournament. Cobra Kai successfully lands an audition, and both Tori and Kenny are picked for the direct competition point matches. To prepare him for this match, the sensei teaches Kenny the silver bullet and pays off the ref once again to ensure Cobra Kai's victory. However, Miyagi Fang manages to qualify, upsetting Silver, who swears to get revenge on Double L, though also congratulating Johnny on his new baby. When Robbie attempts to get Cobra Kai to betray Silver, Terry issues marching orders that if Robbie or Miyagi Fang step foot in this dojo again, they'll be shown no mercy. While discussing the Sekai Takai, the Cobra Kai senseis are paid a visit by Johnny Lawrence, Chozen Taguchi, and Mike Barnes. As Miyagi Fang raids Cobra Kai, Silver squares off with Taguchi, ultimately winning the fight when Chozen has his back turned. After offering some last words to Johnny, Terry arrives at the dojo and, despite his students having zero faith in him now, goads Daniel into another fight, though this time Silver loses. Due to Stingray revising his statement and other students presumably coming forward about the footage exposing Silver, Terry is taken into custody and hauled off to jail. Let's first talk about why Terry Silver is terrifying, specifically the tactics he uses. As we saw at the end of Season 4, if he was willing to betray his best friend by framing him for a crime that he didn't commit, what else was he capable of? As I've spoken about before, one of his greatest assets is the amount of financial resources he possesses. With paid-off referees guaranteeing a win, Silver expands Cobra Kai into many locations across the valley, while also hiring prospective senseis to run these dojos. On top of this, he has a state-of-the-art souped-up flagship location with the latest technology and equipment to train his students to be lethal soldiers. It should also be noted that there's something slightly eerie about his flagship location commercial. It seems innocent enough on the surface, but something makes the viewer feel slightly uneasy. And if you didn't know what kind of person Terry is, you'd never know the difference. When he entertains guests, he has the finest chefs in the world along with the greatest alcohol collection in the world, ready to sway any guests he may entertain. Terry's private weapon display is also impressive, owning a sword once wielded by Uesugi Kenshin. Silver is also willing to triple what he offers a sensei if they can take down Chozen, and as a form of throwing his weight around, takes on the tab for Daniel and Chozen. He displays his financial prowess once again by not only buying Daniel's trees during the charity auction, but also by gifting Stingray an apartment in Johnny's old car. We see more of his aggressive expansion with Topanga Karate as he begins to open even more dojo locations across the valley. With said resources, Silver again bribes the ref during the Sekai Takai qualifying matches, though is unable to sway the council into partnering together for the tournament. Along with his seemingly endless amount of dough, Silver's deceptive facade as a philanthropist and use of this to gain power within the community is also extremely dangerous. This is seen during the commercial, news stories that cover Cobra Kai's win at the All Valley, and even in the dojo itself. Silver also manages to pull this off with a charity auction, offering to teach low-income students for free, calling back to the presentation he put on at the 1985 All Valley. When taking over Topanga Karate, he offers to lower the students' dues to make it hard for them to say no, and also tries the same facade with the council. Of course, we can't also forget about the mental warfare he brings to the table. When Tori confronts him about the ref, Terry turns the tables and tries to make out the bribing of the ref, similar to someone stealing food to survive. He's smart enough to have his lawyer on his side, and in a power move, shows the voicemail that Daniel left to the author himself and burns down Mike Barnes' store, creating a ploy to get Barnes to believe it was Daniel who caused it. Likely because of the recon tactics he learned in Vietnam, Silver finds out the charity that Daniel and Amanda both support and offers to host the auction at his residence. He also uses his classic gaslighting on both Amanda and Daniel, causing them to have a huge fight. It's also worth noticing that when Stingray shows up to the dojo, he is completely scared of Silver, getting into a chimney stance along with the rest of the dojo, avoiding eye contact, flinching when Silver pats him on the back, and standing tall when Silver mentions those words. These bribes could also be another form of intimidation, and that is why Stingray doesn't crack until the end of the season. It's also worth pointing out with these fear tactics, Silver has several people who fear him throughout the season. Stingray, Tori, and of course Daniel when he decides to give up after being defeated by Silver. When confronting Daniel at Stingray's apartment, he does this again cleverly to goad LaRusso into a fight and to attack blindly, throwing him off balance, even using his own techniques against him. As the dojo prepares to sort out its leaders for the Sekai Takai, Silver, seemingly taking Kenny under his wing, gaslights Kenny as well. He tells him that he never implied Payne was a follower, though he did, as he's trying to get him to be a loyal student that although will be a leader, though only by listening to what Silver says. Notice when they're back on the mat, he then implies Payne is the leader by calling him first, but then asks Mr. Park for a new strategy, purposely causing the two to argue. Knowing that the Silver bullet could temporarily incapacitate, and with the ref on his side, Silver silently sends a message to Miyagi-Fang. Although confronted by Robbie, it's clear that he has his students submitted to the dark ways as they follow his every command. When confronting Johnny in the elevator, he subtly threatens him to savor every moment. While it can be up for debate whether it was Silver's idea or Kim's idea for Tori to punch Stone as punishment, as Silver tells Kim that she really broke down Nichols today, but we also know that he used a similar tactic with Daniel in 1985, the fact that Silver condones this and uses it as a threat to keep Tori in line, as well as making her stay to do it, is frightening. He also almost seems to smile in the background when Tori is forced to practice on the dummy. Knowing that Stingray could be his downfall, he was smart enough to delete footage at the old dojo. As the former bad boys of karate invade his household, Terry continues his taunt towards Mike, Chozen, and Johnny, all at different points. Silver even goes on to mock Chozen's supposed death to Johnny, telling him he won't be around to screw up another kid, and also calling him not much for brains. When arriving at Cobra Kai, he tries to downplay the plan Miyagi-Fang had, again attempting to sway his own students. Even in desperation, Silver tries to goad Daniel into another fight, making him believe his friends are dead. Last but not least, this Cobra is very perceptive. He plays things close to the chest and doesn't inform Joe of his full master plan, speaking very vaguely, and although you can tell there's a gleam in his eye, he hardly lets on that he's surprised about the toast kari. Because of this, he was able to look up Chozen and deduce who he was. It's all of these tactics he employs that, as both Kreese and Stingray confirm in different scenes, he's obsessed with power and is willing to achieve that by any means necessary. Let's also talk about his fights with both Chozen and Daniel. We were fortunate to get both of these matchups in Season 5, especially after giving us Silver vs. Johnny in Season 4, another one I wasn't sure if we'd ever see. In his first fight with Daniel, Silver successfully manipulates Daniel into anger by teasing him about how easy it was to break his family apart and how his kids will be in Cobra Kai. Similar to attacking Johnny when he was using Miyagi-Do, Silver seems to be playing with Daniel as he attacks with his initial onslaught. Terry then attacks at full force using the patented Cobra Kai headbutt and using his kicks and reach advantage to keep Daniel at bay, all while getting into Daniel's head. As I mentioned in my How Daniel Faced His Fears video, he uses the drum technique against Daniel to make his knuckles bleed, causing Daniel to attack blindly and anticipate his attack to put him away. Because Daniel is unbalanced, Silver can take advantage of this, even throwing in a towel at the end to mock Daniel's surrender. Right before fighting Chozen, Silver taunts him and does so again throughout different points of the fight. He's able to get the upper hand at first, using his kick to knock down Chozen. However, not long after, Chozen attacks his knee, taking away Terry's ability to stand and throw effective kicks, making him resort to use Honored Brother to turn the fight into a weapons battle. Taking the battle outside, Silver taunts Chozen again both verbally and non-verbally, notably backing up when Chozen presses the attack. Despite this, he manages to slice Taguchi twice, and although he's disarmed claiming that he was meant to die on the battlefield, he takes advantage of Chozen being distracted and inflicts a decisive slice to the back. When arriving at Cobra Kai, Silver, like a lot of the other participants, is drunk and also has some injuries from his fight with Chozen, though most have likely healed by that point as he's walking fine, and attempts to get into Daniel's head again, claiming that he took care of his allies, but it doesn't work this time as Daniel was fully balanced and ready to fight this time. As he feigns looking at his students, something Kenny mimicked earlier in the episode, he attempts to strike first but makes a costly mistake, one that Kreese pointed out in Karate Kid Part 3. He telegraphs his wheel kick. Typically, Silver would favor this kick preceded by some punches, something he used against his sparring partners, Johnny and Daniel. As I talked about in my How Daniel Faces Fears video, LaRusso played his own mind games against Silver by using his own Quicksilver method against him, infuriating Silver and causing him to rethink his strategy. Out of desperation, he attempts to use the silver bullet but it fails, mirroring how in Karate Kid Part 2, Daniel attempted to use the crane kick on Chozen, who countered it. Terry at this point is completely angry, losing his cool and almost attacking purely out of survival, but to no avail. Against the corner and out of options, he attempts to use the trophy from the All Valley he rigged, but is blinded by that crane crap and is defeated. So why did Silver lose? He could no longer rely on the mind games that he favored so much, and he had to rely on his martial arts. Without having that edge, he no longer had an advantage. Silver was also still suffering some injuries from his bout with Chozen, and most likely was also distracted in the same sense that Daniel was in the prior fight. And lastly, Silver was determined that his way was the way, which also explains his motivation for entering the Sekai Takai. As we learned in Season 4, it's not about one way or the other, but it's about forming one's way. These fights tell such a beautiful story, and they're some of my favorites in the franchise thus far. Does Terry Silver have a weakness? He does, and it's not John Kreese, it's his ego. This most likely started all the way back with John Kreese, and as I mentioned in my previous video, is the person that is responsible for this monster. It seems with a closer look that part of his problems with his ego is that he was jealous of Johnny Lawrence. This is evident when being told to refrain from beating Lawrence any further by Kreese, and after the All Valley, he suspects that Kreese brought him back just to get even with Johnny. If you think about it, Johnny is also the reason why Cobra Kai did not enter the Sekai Takai back in 1980. When Kreese explains why he wants to focus on a student and mentions that a student shares the same name as him, you can tell during this explanation that Silver has a mixed reaction but ultimately decides to follow his captain's lead. This jealousy is also subtly explored in Head of the Snake, where after Chozen's defeat, he tells Johnny that while Kreese proudly claimed Lawrence was his best student, he never saw it. This would also explain Terry's look of daggers to both Johnny and Daniel as he's being arrested. Even with having resources that could give everyone everything, Silver's smile fades when Joe tells him that he's not interested, almost insulted as any other applicant would want the job, again demonstrating his ego problem. I'd like to believe when claiming he'll pay triple for anyone that can take down Chozen, this is the angrier Terry we've seen in comparison to some moments in Season 4, disgusted that someone would use his own tactics against him, and why he was surprised at Chozen's toast, realizing he almost got played. As Taguchi draws a line both through action and dialogue, we can see the confidence slowly fading from Terry, even with a look of disbelief as the Miyagi-Do sensei exits. He tries to keep a facade when continuously being shut down on his offers to partner with the Sekai Takai board, and he struggles to keep this up when Miyagi-Fang arrives and disproves his lies. Note the expressions on his face: surprise, offended, determined, anger, disgust, and right before the scene switches from the title, he quickly tries to put a smile back on. Kim Da-eun chastises him for letting this rivalry get in the way, and despite his lying about it, as he told Sensei Joe that he relished in getting the last laugh over Daniel, who he still considered his rival, he is still pissed that Da-eun thinks he's not prepared as he's being scolded. Another example of Silver being obsessed with this rivalry is that when convincing Tori she won the tournament, is that he says, "You're the champion. I know it, LaRusso knows it, the whole valley knows it," implying that it was about rubbing it in Daniel's face. When Gunther informs both dojos that they will have to fight to gain entry into the tournament, he looks surprised and shocked that he has to put his dojo through this. Again, when trying to convince his students that Miyagi-Fang is in the wrong, Terry's desperation is on display for all to see. He in a way now feels the same way when he gaslit his victims. Without others falling for his mind games, he has nothing, and his confidence is nothing but an act. Now to talk about a rumor that has been talked about before, but I'll give my 2 cents on it. Is Terry Silver ill, or at worst, dying? Given how much this character is a favorite of Hayden Schlossberg's, I doubt they would cop out and give him such a fate. I will point out that I think it's more about his regrets of not having a family or someone to pass his lessons on to personally outside of the students in his dojo. This would further explain his motivations to enter Cobra Kai into the Sekai Takai, as he wants it to live forever and leave a legacy behind. During his dinner with Joe, he implies that he wants to do this with Cobra Kai, namely the lessons with the students, as he knows that only money can buy so much. This is something he also mentions while having drinks with Sensei Kim, as he mentions youth being one of the things money can't buy. It's worth pointing out that when showing off his weapon collection, his toast in telling the story of Cobra Kai mirrors that of Miguel's arc, to righting the wrongs of the past, and a good story is worth something. In terms of passing things on, this would also explain why he takes Kenny under his wing, something he started to do early on in Season 4. When Kim Da-eun agrees to teach the US students with her senseis, she's convinced that Terry is trying to spread her father's legacy, and also agrees with this idea, which would explain why she would still want to enter the Sekai Takai. Of course, the big moment everyone talks about is the elevator scene where Silver presumably talks about ensuring the future, and a savor every moment where he talks about youth in the same episode. If Kreese and Kim are now the ones taking over Cobra Kai, it means that his legacy will be no more. Here are my final thoughts on Scary Terry and what we could see from him in the future. Silver's character was even more deranged than what we saw in Season 4, and I think it was very fitting as they needed to up the ante even more. Given his defeat at the hands of Daniel, I doubt we'll see him go out quietly in terms of Season 6. What I would personally love to see is a fight between Kreese and Silver, and if the two cross paths again, I doubt John is going to let him off easy for what he did. While he has a lot of resources, I can't see Terry getting off light with what he's done, and now that his reputation is questionable, it's going to be interesting to see how things turn out for him in the final season of Cobra Kai. Like Silver, Kreese is someone who also had a troubled past. The difference is that he's not as twisted as we originally thought, at least compared to Scary Terry.